Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to lesson 12. In this lesson, we're going to cover two very important verbs in the Quran, Kaana and Qaala. These appear everywhere in the Quran. However, they are a little bit different from the verbs that we've seen so far. They are what's known as irregular verbs, which means when we conjugate them, the patterns are a little bit different. We'll get into that. But before we get into that, I'd like to review how we conjugate regular past tense verbs. So this is the third time I'm showing you this table, so you should hopefully have memorized it. So go ahead and recite it with me. Practice this with me. Okay, we'll start with kataba on the top right and go down. Kataba, katabu, katabat, katabna, katabta, katabtum, katabti, katabtunna, katabtu, katabna. So you should not only know this table, but you should understand what each of these words mean when you see it. So when you see katabtu, you should automatically think, okay, that means I wrote. Okay? Now go ahead and practice this table with a different verb. Let's use the verb dakhala. So dakhala means he entered. Go ahead and fill in the rest of the table and conjugate this verb on your own. Okay, once you've done that, then you'll have practiced regular verbs. Okay, so that table that we've been seeing so far is how you conjugate regular verbs. So what are regular verbs? So the vast majority of verbs in Arabic are triliteral. They have three root letters. So dakhala is dal, kha, lam. Kataba is kaf, ta, ba. And all of the other verb forms are based on these three root letters. Now, regular verbs don't have waw, alif or hamza, or ya as one of their three root letters. And they don't repeat the same second and third root letter. So the second and third letter are different root letters. Okay, so now let's take a look at Kaana. So Kaana, the three root letters for Kaana are kaf, waw, and noon. So you'll notice that this is not a regular verb. Why? Because of the waw here. This waw is what makes this an irregular verb. And so kana in Arabic, it means was. Let's see how do we actually conjugate this for the different, if I want to say he was versus she was, they were, how do I say that in Arabic? So the first thing that you'll notice is that the third person singular is not kawana, it's kana. Kaana. So the waw changes to an alif here. Alright, so he was kaana. What about they were? Kanu. Okay, so far so good. This is like dakhala, dakhalu. What about she was? Kanat. Again, this is very similar to regular verbs. We say dakhala, dakhalat. Kataba, katabat. Kana, kanat. But the next verb is where the changes begin. You'll remember that if it's a regular verb, I say dakhalna. But I can't really say kanna. I instead say kunna. So kunna, without the alif at the end, is how I say they were when I'm speaking about a group of women. So they were mothers. Kunna ummahat. Okay, what about you? You were kunta. You all were, kuntum. You were, speaking to a woman, kunti. You all were, speaking to a group of women, kuntunna. I was, kuntu. We were, kunna. Kunna. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video just to read through this table on your own. Say it a couple of times so you practice it and you know this table well. Kana, kanu, kanat, kunna, kunta, kuntum, kunti, kuntunna, kuntu, kunna. Alright, so now that we know the table, and we'll definitely practice the table, but I also want to cover the rules of kana. So kana takes on a couple of extra grammatical rules. The first one is that the predicate takes on the mansoob case. So what do I mean by that? First of all, what is the predicate? The predicate is answering the question, what was he? So for example, in the phrase kana maridan, he was ill, what was he? He was ill. So maridan is the predicate. Maridan is the predicate, and you'll notice it takes on a double fatha. And the reason it does that is because it has to be in the mansoob case. Kaana maridan. Okay, so notice a couple of things here. First of all, I don't need to put the word huwa here. I don't need to say huwa kana maridan because the verb itself is a singular masculine form. If we go back here, it's in the singular masculine third person form. So this only can mean he was ill. So I don't have to say huwa kana maridan. If I wanted to say this in the present tense, he is ill, how would I say that? Well, then I don't need a verb. I can just say huwa maridun. Huwa maridun. And in that case, the predicate is in the marfu' case. But now with the addition of kana, it becomes in the mansoob case. Kana maridun. Okay, the second thing that I should point out is that oftentimes in the Quran, you'll see kana followed by a preposition, then followed by an indefinite noun. And in that case, the noun remains in the marfu'. This is probably easiest just to take a look at an example. Kana lahu ikhwatun. We've seen in a previous lesson that lahu, the lam at the beginning, usually means that person has. So lahu ikhwatun means he has brothers. Kana lahu ikhwatun means he had brothers. So it just changes it to be past tense. And in this case, the noun remains in the marfu' case. Kana lahu ikhwatun, not kana lahu ikhwatan. All right. And this is something that's special to the Quran. You won't really see this in modern Arabic, but kana oftentimes just means is. Especially when referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. And God is the most merciful and the most forgiving. You don't say God was. It's translated as the God is the most merciful and the most forgiving. Alright, that's everything for kana. Now we'll move on to said in Arabic. How do we say said? It turns out that the root letters are qaf, waw, lam. And so is this going to be a regular verb? No, it's going to be an irregular because again we have this waw at the center. So just like with kana, we see that the past tense, singular, third person masculine, it's not qawala, it's qaala. Qaala. He said is qaala. They said is qalu. She said qalat. Those women said qulna. And so you'll notice it's very similar. It's following the same type of pattern as kana. So this week instead of kunna, it's qulna. Instead of kunta, it's qulta. You said. Qultum, qulti, qultunna, qultu, I said. Qulna, with an alif at the end, we said. Okay? So qala, again, a very, very common verb in the Quran. It's often used to introduce direct speech, or actually always used to introduce direct speech. So if someone said something directly, then we use the word qala before that. And it often appears at the beginning of a sentence, or close to the beginning of a sentence. So here's an example. Qaala rajulani such and such. The two men said such and such. So whatever comes after the subject, and that's what that person said. Now, rajulani means two men. This is actually in the dual form, which we'll cover in the next lesson. We haven't covered this yet, but it just means two men. Qaala is the verb, he said, and so the two men said such and such. Okay? Now, sometimes qaala actually does appear in the middle of a sentence, and oftentimes that's with lamma at the beginning of the sentence. So lamma means when. So, as an example of that, لَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ قَالُوا. So dakhala means they entered. عَلَيْهِ, they entered upon him, or they went to see him, is probably the best English translation. لَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ, when they went to see him, قَالُوا, they said such and such. Alright? So that's how you use qala. So in this lesson, we've covered both kana and qala, the two most important irregular verbs that you'll see in the Quran. Let's do a few exercises to practice that. The first one, كانوا قوما مجرمين. كانوا قوما مجرمين. So كانوا means they were, قوما a people, مجرمين. So مجرم means criminal. So مجرمين is the plural, the masculine plural of مجرم. So مجرمين, they were a criminal people. So why is it قوما instead of قوم? Because it's in the mansub case because of Kaana. Why is it مجرمين instead of مجرمون? Because مجرمين describes قوما, and so it has to match the case. And so just like this is mansub, this is also in mansub case. كان معه. كان he was. مع with. Who him. He was with him. Last exercise. لما رجع موسى إلى قومه قال. So this is an example of using لما and قال together. So رجع means returned. So when Musa returned, when Moses returned to his people, إلى means to, قومه, his people, قومه. Why is it kasra on the meme? Because of إلى. When Moses returned to his people, قال, he said, and then the ayah continues. Alright, I'll give you a few exercises that you can practice on your own, but that's it for today's lesson. Jazakallahu khair for listening, and please share this with someone who can benefit. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.